Hi, this is Keith, and I'm back with my next video in the How the Government Should Work series. This video we're going to talk about the debt and deficit. First thing to say about the debt and deficit is no one has a plan. Democrats don't have a plan, Republicans don't have a plan, the White House doesn't have a plan. I invite you to go try to find their plans. Go search for them, go ask them, send them emails and ask them what their plan is, and you will find nothing. They don't have a plan. This falls into the overall agenda of being fiscally responsible. I think that's fairly obvious. A little background, rough math. The federal government collects roughly $3 trillion each year in taxes, and the federal government spends roughly $4 trillion each year in its spending, and that's about a $1 trillion annual deficit. And that's in rough order of magnitude where we're at right now. A little history. All modern history presidents have added to the debt and deficit. The current predicted debt will soon pass 30 trillion. It's currently around 26 trillion, but with all of the coronavirus stimulus bills and such, it's going to pass 30 trillion much sooner than people thought. If you look at how presidents have added to the debt, I won't go through all the numbers, but if you look at just in terms of dollars, Clinton was added to the debt the least. Obama added to the debt the most. If you look at dollars in terms of dollars per year, Clinton still spent the least, and it looks like Trump right now is on average to spend the most per year. He's going to spend on average $2 billion per year if you count all the latest coronavirus stimulus payments. $2 billion per year for 4 years he's been in office. If you look at percent increases, Ronald Reagan holds the record. He's the one that really got the debt engine started. He had percent-wise massive increases to the debt, both in terms of actual dollars and percent dollars added. And then once again, Clinton holds the record for the least. Basically, Clinton, and I think you have to give a little bit of a nod to Newt Gingrich, had the best debt and deficit record, and Reagan, Obama, and Trump have the worst. George W. Bush was nothing very good either. How do you fix the debt and deficit? Very common sense. Spend less, bring in more revenue. But things you need to consider when developing a debt and deficit reduction plan is fast is bad. Throwing millions of government workers out of jobs all at once due to some kind of severe austerity plan is counterproductive to what you want to do. Severe austerity measures in general usually have an unwelcome cooling effect on the economy. So trying to get the debt and deficit under control too fast is bad. Right now, interest rates are low, which is about the only good news when it talks to debt and deficit. So it's not impacting our spending as bad as it could. You got to know that 2/3 of our debt is mandatory spending, Social Security, Medicare. No one wants to cut mandatory spending. It's a third rail because there really are real-life heartbreaking impacts of cutting mandatory spending. This is my ideal debt and deficit policy changes. I split it up into mandatory and discretionary spending where it made sense. But it, on a whole, cut $200 billion a year from spending. You do that by freezing current discretionary spending, the top line numbers, and you leave them frozen for several years, and you let inflation turn that into less deficits. You reduce military engagements around the world. We're just spending way too much money holding an empire around the world. And you do means testing for SSI and Medicare. Essentially, people that don't need it shouldn't get it. I talked about earlier about creating an anti-corruption secretary and agency to identify and eliminate waste and abuse. I think that's something that goes hand in hand with this plan. You've got to have somebody who's actively engaged in sorting out and finding the waste in government spending. And then you've got to increase revenue, reforming the tax code, raising capital gains tax, restructuring the cap for SSI and Medicare contributions. Some people talk about eliminating it, meaning that no matter how much you make, I actually think there's a smarter way to do it and actually help out poor people. So I call it restructuring. I can give you more details on that if anybody actually will watch these videos. You got to raise taxes on the wealthy. Reagan, Bush, 43, and Trump have all cut taxes on the wealthy, and you've got to take some of that back if you really are serious about debt and deficit policy changes. How would I do that? No executive orders. Too important to do as executive orders. I try to do nothing in the first 100 days. Again, you got to convince the people that what you're doing here is smart. And so you'd wait until you convince people to do this. I'd have the first one take a small bite. I talk about small bites in the first 2 years, larger bites in the second 2 years. I'd take a small bite in the first 2 years, freezing discretionary spending, means testing for SSI and Medicare, restructuring the SSI cap, and then I take a bigger bite in the second 2 years with tax reform, raising the capital gains tax, and raising taxes on the wealthy. There's going to be a lot of pushback on all of those, and so you got to make sure you have people behind you, which is why you wait till the second 2 years. All of this, of course, depends on Congress getting behind it, which is never a given. The reason we don't have any kind of debt and deficit reduction plan is because Congress is scared to tackle it. So whether you can get Congress to do this or not is a big question. But if you really wanted to solve the problem, this is what you would do. Final thoughts. No one in Washington wants to fix the debt and deficit problem. It's too hard of a problem, and they believe they wouldn't get reelected if they did. No one in Washington has a plan to fix the debt and deficit. No one has a plan in their desk. They all saw what happened to Paul Ryan when he pulled a plan out. Not saying his plan was good. I'm just saying when he actually tried to tackle the problem and put a plan out, he got abused. They talk about it as a problem. They'll never tell you what the solutions are. Actual solutions. They'll talk in vague phrases, and they'll talk around it, but they'll never tell you what the real solution is. And that's how you fix the debt and deficit. Next time, I'm going to talk about immigration, which is very similar in that no one in Washington wants to fix it, which is why I'm an independent and I'm not voting for Democrats or Republicans anymore. Thank you.